Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men and the new Teen Titans special edition from 1982. The wraparound cover is by inside artists Walt Simonson and Terry Austin, and it is a pretty cool cover. Really, the eye-catching elements of the cover are Dark Phoenix on the front part of the cover. That's a very interesting pose that Walt Simonson has developed for her. And of course we have the Phoenix Firebird effect as well. And then on the back cover you've got a very imposing figure, and that is Darkseid. And it really gives Terry Austin lots to do with his hatching and a little tiny bit of cross hatching as well on the craggy features of Darkseid. So very, very cool cover. This would have been a really exciting event, a rare crossover between Marvel Comics and DC Comics, the two major publishers of the era, and that continues to this present day, although maybe there's some debate about Image Comics having overtaken DC. But this was supposed to be part one of a two-part crossover. This one handled by Marvel Comics. So the creative team is from Marvel, and also this particular comic distributed by Marvel. There was supposed to be a follow-up, a sequel, an issue 2 handled by the creative team of New Teen Titans, but it never came to pass because of editorial wrangling between the two rival companies. So let's open this one up to the splash page, and it does begin with a really cool splash page by Walt Simonson. He really lets rip his Jack Kirby influences on the art job in this particular issue, because the crossover features characters from Jack Kirby's Fourth World. But before I move into the story, I just want to note the inside cover here is an advertisement for Marvel Comics. You've got a teeny tiny figure of Kitty Pryde there. This is penciled and inked by Walt Simonson. And basically the message is very simple to any DC Comics readers picking up this special edition. Marvel Comics is power. It says, the full creative team is here. Chris Claremont scripter, Walt Simonson penciler, Terry Austin finisher, Tom Orzechowski letterer, and Glynis Wein colorist. So when it says there that Terry Austin is finisher, it means that Simonson is in, because this is a 64-page special, Simonson is probably handing, in some cases, breakdowns to Terry Austin. So Terry Austin doing a fair bit of work in inks, in the final inks for the art job. Title of the story is Apokolips Now, so obviously a play on the title of Francis Ford Coppola's 1977 film. Or is it 1979? I think it's 1979 actually, now that I think about it, though he was filming it in 1977 famously or infamously. So the story opens at the source wall, and we have a little dialogue between Metron here and Darkseid. So Darkseid says, look about you, Metron. Behold the Promethean giants, a race as great, intellects as powerful as our own. They tried to breach the wall. For their ultimate folly, they paid the ultimate price. So they're dead. Yet you would follow in their footsteps. So Metron wants to breach the wall in his never-ending quest for knowledge. And they come to something of an agreement. So Metron says to Darkseid, I've seen all there is to see, learned all there is to learn. One mystery remains, what lies beyond the wall. Denied that answer, my life has neither meaning nor purpose. Well, that's a bit dramatic, isn't it? Darkseid says, take care, Metron. Perhaps there are things even gods are not meant to know. So Metron says, do not mock me with your false concern. You care nothing for me, only for my Psychon wave, which he hands over to Darkseid. In exchange for it, Darkseid says, I give you the means to succeed where all others have failed. The Omega Phase helmet will enable your Mobius chair to penetrate the wall. At least that is the theory. My scientists were understandably reluctant to test it. Farewell, Metron. Good luck, says Darkseid. And then we get this nice little sequence of panels as Metron makes his way to the source wall and apparently right through it, thus leaving his chair behind. Thus, Metron, do we each attain our heart's desire. for you the end of a quest, the final answer. Now, what does he want that Psychon Wave device for? For me, the fulfillment of a dream, the rebirth of a world, and dominion over the stars. And he laughs like any good Silver Age villain. So what has he got from his end of the bargain? Well, we'll discover that in the course of the story. So a nice little prologue there. And then our scene switches to the X-Mansion in Westchester, New York. And there's a Danger Room training sequence happening. So we get to see a fastball special there. Colossus casting Wolverine through the air towards some mechanical threat. Nightcrawler in action too. And the Professor overseeing the training exercise and getting some lip from Wolverine. Until you get it right, Wolverine, in terms of the amount of training they have to do. And for the umpteenth time, call me Professor. So Wolverine responds, sure thing, Chuck. And then back into the training sequence. So that's a nice little bit of kind of on-model characterization there in terms of the relationship between the Professor and Wolverine in particular. So the sequence continues, and this is a device for showing readers who the characters are and what their power sets are as well. In particular, any DC Comics readers of the New Titans who weren't familiar with the X-Men. And the training sequence is interrupted by the arrival of Kitty Pryde, who tells them that dinner's ready. In the games room, we've got a nice little sequence with Scott Summers playing pool, and he uses his optic blast, so we get to see the degree of precision control he has over his optic blast now after all the years of training with Professor X. So he pots all the balls with one blast. And then up in her attic bedroom, we have Storm watering her houseplants, and we get a little demonstration of her control over the weather. And then at the end of the day, after dinner presumably, Professor X has fallen into a snooze, and then this mysterious figure, this hand, wearing some kind of contraption device, touches the side of his head, and his thoughts are tapped. The essence of his memories drawn forth. Her name is Jean Grey. She was an X-Man. So of course, readers of the X-Men know well that Jean Grey was a founding member of the X-Men going all the way back to 1963, but had bonded with a cosmic entity, the Phoenix, and turned bad, and then killed herself in the blue area of the moon in the famous issue 137 of Uncanny X-Men. So here, this mysterious figure visits all the X-Men in bed and seems to be taking from them their memories of Jean Grey. And we get a little account of her story there as well. We see her transformation from young teenage love of Cyclops all the way to Dark Phoenix in the memories of Storm there. And then this same hand reaches out to Kitty Pryde, and she wakes up before it touches her. And we see the menacing face, the rocky granite face there of Apokolips, yes? And she screams and phases through the floor of her bedroom all the way down to the Professor's study. And all the X-Men are woken up by the scream. They recognize Kitty, that it was she that was screaming and that she's in the sitting room. So Storm rushes to comfort Kitty, and what happens now is that Kitty or Storm says to Cyclops, "You had a nightmare, Scott. So did I." So they're all catching up on the fact that they were having nightmares about Jean and about Dark Phoenix. And then Kitty says, "It's him." But who him? "Stay with her," Aurora says Scott. "Seems like we all had a rough night, almost too rough for coincidence," he thinks to himself. And there's a knock on the door. So he opens the front door of the mansion, and then who's there? Surprise, surprise, except for apparently Phoenix. And she moves towards Scott and asks for his help. So we get a very cool DeLuca effect there. But she seems to discorporate just as she reaches him. And he yells out there, her name, of course. So there's a mystery there. Also, interesting little note here is in Uncanny X-Men 171 rather, where Rogue joins the X-Men, it's guest penciled by Walt Simonson, and it features a little sequence where Scott is in the same room, is sleeping with Madeline Pryor, and is wearing this same blue stripy pajamas. So just a funny little note that he brought the stripy pajamas from X-Men New Teen Titans over to his guest penciling job on issue 171. And now the scene switches. So there's a mystery there in terms of what's happening with Phoenix, with Dark Phoenix. And then I like Claremont's captions for places. So this is a nice one here where he says, New York has always been a city of landmarks, the latest of which can be found on an isle in the East River, Titan's Tower, home of a band of superpowered teenagers. Though in existence only a comparatively short time, the team has garnered a formidable reputation. And then we zero in on one member of the team, Raven, child of a human woman and another dimensional demon lord. She's an empath, a healer. So we get the key points about her. She sleeps now and dreams. In those dreams, her soul self soars among the stars, at peace with itself. It is a rare, tranquil interlude, and Raven revels in it. Then suddenly, light flares in the celestial darkness, blinding, predatory, insatiable. So there's this screech of the attacking Phoenix bird, attacking Raven's soul self, and she wakes up screaming. So Kitty woke up screaming, now Raven's waking up screaming, and there comes to her Starfire, Princess Coriander of Tamaran. So she asks her teammate, is she all right? And Raven responds, it was a dream. So she explains some of the dream, and then she gets to the key point. Then I saw the earth transformed into a burning wasteland, its people stripped of their humanity. And she says to Starfire, sometimes my dreams come true. So there's sometimes her dreams can be prescient. I have a random prescient ability which occasionally allows me glimpses of the future. Suppose this was one of those. So then another member of the new Teen Titans arrives. That's Changeling, and he's a bit of a jokester. So he transforms into, and he can transform his shape into animal shapes, not people shapes. So he transforms into the Phoenix, and this is the interesting bit here. Starfire immediately recognizes him and shouts out Phoenix and attacks the bird. So of course it's her teammate, and he jokes, okay, no more bird impressions. And she says, do not laugh. In my warrior's rage, I could have slain you. So she's got a kind of like a warrior's rage, the equivalent of Wolverine's berserker rage. That's an interesting little parallel there in terms of the two teams. And Starfire continues, Raven, pray that what you saw was a dream. For if it is real, if that is our future, then the earth, the universe itself, may well be doomed. So a starbolt flashes from her hand to the communication console to activate the Titan's red alert. So at this point, it should be said, whenever there's an intercompany crossover of characters, usually you'll get some kind of rationale in terms of how are the characters from one universe operating in another universe. Maybe there's a point of transition. But here, the device is simply that the Teen Titans and the X-Men occupy the same universe, that they're in the same universe. So there's no explanation of how it is that they are, both of them, in the same universe, which is an interesting, just like there's a kind of like, there's potentially a narrative problem there, there's potentially like a meta-narrative problem, and just ignore it, just have them be in the same universe. And then the scene switches to the New Jersey Turnpike Road, and there is a car chase, and Kid Flash intervenes, and he takes out the engine of this particular car that has been chased by the cops here. That's a really nice panel, that tight angle on the front wheel of the chasing cop car. Nice stuff by Walt Simonson. Then we pick up with Donna Troy, Wonder Girl, who is soaring towards Titan Tower in answer to the red alert. And also we've got Cyborg as well. He is swinging around Midtown Manhattan. We got a little few details about him, how he is a cyborg, a cybernetic organism, a superpowered synthesis of man and machine. And I like this little detail here in Claremont's third-person narration. He'd rather be human. And this is an interesting panel too, because it kind of places the story in terms of X-Men continuity at least. So Cyborg is swinging past 57th Street and Madison. This used to be a skyscraper, he thinks to himself, till it got trashed by the X-Men. And that's a reference to issue 155 of Uncanny X-Men. Media describes them as outlaws. I wonder why the Titans have never tangled with them. Well, because there wasn't an intercompany crossover, Cyborg. So upon Cyborg's arrival, Raven's story is once more quickly told. And what we're going to get now is there's one member of the Teen Titans that hasn't yet responded to the red alert, and he's in Gotham City. And we have a view here of STA or Star Laboratories, and Dick Grayson, aka Robin, throwing some antagonist out a window, and he thinks to himself, Intergang is back in action. I'm glad there were only a handful of them in on this robbery. They were tough, but something about the way they moved isn't quite right. So he unmasks his opponent, and he's shocked by the inhuman, dead-looking face. Who? What is this? And then he is taken by surprise by none other than Terminator. So that is Slade Wilson, Deathstroke the Terminator. And these are deadly enemies. It'll take a better man than you to finish me, mister, says Robin. But Deathstroke basically just kicks him in the head and knocks him out cold. He says, you're a real hotshot, Robin, but against me, a man who utilizes 90% of his brain capacity with the physical abilities to match, you're simply outclassed. So as Terminator turns to collect his unconscious colleagues and the scientific apparatus they came here to steal, a beeper on Robin's belt buckle begins to flash. So this is the moment that Starfire sent out that red alert. The Teen Titans red alert, unheard, unheeded. So of course they're going to be wondering, why doesn't Robin show up for the red alert? But the scene switches now to the Annandale, New York home of John and Elaine Gray, Jean's parents. So look at the blackbird there just sitting in their front yard. That gives you an idea of how big that front yard is and what maybe you can afford on a professor's salary, which is the profession of Jean Grey's father. So they have had a visitation by Jean as well. She said, Father, help me. I took her in my arms and she disappeared. So the X-Men have arrived to say the same thing happened at the X-Mansion. The professor asks, Professor John Grey asks, what does this mean? My wife and I demand an explanation, Cyclops. You owe us that much at least. You told us Jean was dead. Is she or isn't she? Because of course there never was a body after the discorporation of Jean in the blue area of the moon in 137, issue 137 of Uncanny X-Men. So Cyclops says here, she was disintegrated before my eyes, Professor. As I understand it, that's a death. But as Phoenix, Jean had tapped into a primal universal force. She wielded virtually infinite power. Can such a being truly die? I don't know. I'm not sure I want to. All that's certain is that something is happening. Now that's quite an interesting angle there that Simonson has chosen to draw Cyclops. I don't think it quite 100% works, the perspective there. The visor should be more tightly wrapped around his brow. So it just gives you a sense that although he is hugely accomplished, Simonson was still developing as an artist throughout the 80s. And I'm sure if he was looking back at this, he might make the same remark I did about the visor there. So Jean's mother asks about the whole business. Why, for pity's sake, why is this happening? Why is their grief torn open again? And Storm is there to comfort her. And then the professor projects himself astrally into the room and begs forgiveness for his Utra appearance, and gives the news. I've searched telepathically with our mutant detecting cerebro computer system, but there is no trace of Jean. I have, however, discovered something that may be of value. So here we go. The plot is thickening. Throughout the evening, mysterious incidents have occurred, beginning at Kennedy Airport, then in the North Atlantic, in Sullivan County, Texas, Antarctica, and Edinburgh, he says. The timing of these events coincides with our dual appearances of Phoenix. More importantly, they occurred in places where she manifested her power. So reference to Uncanny X-Men history. If this progression continues, we should be able to anticipate the next event and be there to confront whoever is responsible. So Wolverine says, sounds good to me. That's a sucker I'm looking forward to meeting. You okay, Charlie? You look a little ragged. So the professor is a little bit weakened from all the strain that he's been under, and he says to the X-Men that he'll be in touch again. And then we pick up with the Teen Titans. They've gone to Gotham to investigate the non-appearance of Robin, and they find him unconscious in an alleyway where Deathstroke left him. And so he says he's okay. Who ambushed him? So he reveals that it was the Terminator, and then there's an explanation there of how they knew he was in trouble because he didn't answer the red alert. And then Starfire arrives saying that she searched the city. There's no sign of the evil one, by which she means Phoenix, Dark Phoenix. So now we get an explanation of exactly how it is that Starfire knows about Phoenix. And again, we get this blended sense of the two universes here. She says, I learned of Phoenix just prior to my escape to Earth and joining the Teen Titans. We were contacted, as were all the major starfaring races, by Lilandra, Empress of the Shi'ar, a galactic state even the Citadel respects. She told us of an Earth woman who had once saved the universe and who, now driven insane by her immense power, would surely destroy it. We watched in awe and horror as Phoenix made a star go supernova, consuming its planetary system and 5 billion inhabitants. She was hungry, you see. The star was sustenance to her. That Dabari died in the process was irrelevant. So these are all references to Uncanny X-Men 135, 136. A Shi'ar battlecruiser intercepted her and she blew it out of space. Lilandra pledged to end the threat of Phoenix forever soon after she reported the evil one slain. And again, that's a reference to 137, the events of issue 137. So Raven's dream indicates otherwise, says Starfire. My friends, the Chaos Bringer must be found. She must be destroyed. So, they talk a bit more about that. And there's a little debate about whether they should be on Terminator's tail or Phoenix. So Robin decides, we're Titan Starfire, we stick together, we'll track down Phoenix. Though I do not know what Robin, the teen wonder, could do against Dark Phoenix. In any case, he says, if we find her, fine. If not, we tackle the Terminator, fair enough. So Starfire, who's got very strong emotions, a very passionate alien woman, gives Robin a big kiss. It's typical of Claremont as well that you've got to have some characters kissing in his comics too. I accept your terms, Robin, and thank you with all my heart. That's a very Claremontian phrase, with all my heart. And in the background, Changeling is a bit envious. Figures I'm the one the Terminator almost killed. Robin's the one who gets kissed. And I like this little joke here. Cyborg says they don't call him the Teen Wonder for nothing. So off they go, and we get a little... they've decided that they are going to pay a visit to the X-Men. So however they know the location of the X-Men's headquarters is another thing, but off they go, and we get a little news report for a special bulletin about explosions have leveled the Frost Industries research facility in Chicago, Illinois. So that is a setup for the sequel that never came about. In any case, elsewhere, the purpose of their labor is unknown to them. Each worker is told precisely enough to enable him to do his job, no more than that. Indeed, throughout this vast labyrinthine network of caverns and tunnels, only one person wonders what it's all about. Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke the Terminator, the most expensive mercenary / assassin in the world and worth every penny. You know, it was only on reading this crossover between Teen Titans and Uncanny X-Men that I realized, I mean, I'm sure I must have read about it before, where Rob Liefeld gets half the inspiration for Wade Wilson, the most expensive or an expensive mercenary assassin. You know, and also when we get to see Deathstroke wearing his full mask as well. So Liefeld pulling from Deathstroke for his design and invention of Deadpool. So Slade, there you go. What a slip that is. Slade enjoying some champagne, and the glass is crashed from his hand. But before I turn the page, I just want to comment on Simonson's art here. I love that top-down angle. He's leaning into his Kirby influence very much on this particular page, and I think it looks fantastic. I think it looks great. So let's continue. So Deathstroke whirls around and sends some shooting stars at his attacker, who turns out to be this very Kirby-esque character, Ravok the Ravager. And, excuse me, Darkseid enters to break up the fight. He says of Deathstroke, he says, "He's here because I wish it so. He's useful to me, Ravok, as are you. But such usefulness, like my patience, is finite. Do not push your luck too far, either of you. Terminator, take your cadre to the final siphon point. You know what to do there. Ravok, your objective is the X-Men. I want them alive and undamaged." So there we go. So now the plot is thickening even more, and our scene switches to the X-Mansion, and the Professor is asleep again, but he is not unalert to any prospective danger, which occurs in the case of the violent arrival of Starfire, who exclaims, "The moment of your death is at hand." So the Professor defends himself. It's a really nice panel there of the various energies that are exuded by the different characters. So the Professor knocks Starfire to the ground with a Psybolt, and then he is attacked by ultra high frequency sonics, which inhibit his concentration. He tries to get a psychic call out to the X-Men, and that's excuse me, that's Cyborg's doing. And then Raven, who's an empath, tells Cyborg to switch off his device because she recognizes now that the Professor is a telepath. "I hear his screams, feel his pain in my mind. It's tearing me apart." So what happens here is that she manages to neutralize the Professor using the powers of her soul self, and then the Teen Titans kind of catch up with each other on what has just transpired. And first and foremost, Robin gives them a dressing down, or more particularly, he gives Starfire a dressing down. He says, "People, being Teen Titans doesn't give us any special status. We have to obey the law, just like everyone else, and play by the rules." So he says to Starfire, "You can't simply smash into people's homes and attack them like you did. In this land, a person is innocent until proven guilty. Our ways may seem strange and even foolish to you, but if you want to remain a Titan, you have to honor them." So that's a nice little way of rationalizing what maybe wouldn't have been rationalized in the Silver Age. You've got to have this dramatic attack on the Professor, but it comes out of an on-model characterization of Starfire and her passionate nature. And Robin very likely wanted to knock on the door and interview the Professor or just have a chat with him, but it all went otherwise because of Starfire's passion. So Raven is tuned into the sad emotions that permeate the house regarding Jean. "Could we have made a mistake?" she asks. But Starfire is adamant. Phoenix was an X-Man, and Robin traced the X-Men to this place. So that's how, of course, Robin, trained by Batman, the world's greatest detective, that's how he figured out the X-Men's headquarters and base. And then there's an explosion, and there's an attack by Parademons, who are, of course, Darkseid's shock commandos. So now we're going to get a nice little action sequence of the Parademons up against the Teen Titans. And I don't know, is it surprisingly or not, but they get the better of all the Teen Titans, and they take them through a boom tube teleportation portal. But in the confusion, they've missed a changeling who decides to head along with them incognito and see what he can do to help his teammates. The strain is murderous, but because Gar Logan is a hero, he endures and hurries to join the commando team as they vanish from the Earth. So where are they headed? But first of all, there is a scene set in the morning time on a certain remote butte in New Mexico, where long ago, in gentler happy days, Scott Summers and Jean Grey consummated their love. So that's a reference to Uncanny X-Men 132. And who's on top of this piece of rock except for Deathstroke? And he is overseeing the use of this massive piece of equipment. Really cool drawing by Walt Simonson. It's a siphon, and it's being used to absorb Phoenix's residual psychic energy wherever she used her power, from Antarctica to Chicago to here, he says. This is the last and biggest module, because this is where Jean and Scott made love for the very first time, the consummation of their love. So there's an implication there was quite a deal of energy expended by Phoenix there, and they're going to get it all in this. Okay, I have to say it, rather phallic looking like siphon. I think Claremont is having a bit of fun there, which maybe the adult readers would get and not the 10-year-olds. So this is a cool little sequence coming up. Deathstroke is intent on the construction of the big piece of equipment. The big man is gathering a heck of a lot of raw power. I wonder what he's got in mind. He asks himself rhetorically, who cares? Just so, when this caper's over, he remembers his friends, namely me. He wants to get paid. And then, this is cool, so he gets tapped on the shoulder with a cigar. Got a light bulb? Sure, he says. But of course, he's not taken entirely by surprise. I'm impressed. I didn't think anyone could get the drop on me. You should have struck while you had the chance, fella. That bit of bravado will cost you. But he misses Wolverine. So here we have Wolverine against Deathstroke. But it's over pretty quickly as Cyclops blasts some of the Parademons and Colossus wrecks the huge device on Cyclops' orders. And Storm also gets in on the action, and she thinks to herself, this is where Scott and Jean were happiest, the last idyllic interlude before her transformation to Dark Phoenix and she pauses, her death. How dare they desecrate it? So she's angry. Nightcrawler's also involved. I like that little cartoony drawing of Kitty Pryde thumbing her nose at one of the Parademons. And Deathstroke knows who they are, the X-Men. We didn't count on their intervention, but that's why the big man hired me, to deal with the unexpected. Those mutants are certainly living up to their reputation, he thinks to himself. They've got my Parademons on the run. If not for my super fast reflexes, Wolverine's punch would have KO'd me. But it didn't, and he didn't take a second look to make sure. A fatal mistake. So he targets Storm with a fear ray, which makes her tune into her claustrophobia, and she's knocked out of the fight. And then he uses a Toxicloud grenade to take out the rest of the X-Men, while Cyclops is cut down by an energy disperser bolt used by one of the Parademons. Soon, only Colossus is left. This is an interesting sequence here where Deathstroke uses a judo throw to throw Colossus off the top of the boots, and basically he's knocked unconscious. I don't know, like Colossus is supposed to be nigh invulnerable. I reckon that he'd remain conscious after falling from the top of that outcrop. Terminator, should we not rebuild the Siphon? Asked one of the Parademons. No time, he says. We're behind schedule. The big guy have to be content with what he's got. Considering who our prisoners are, I don't think he'll mind. So Darkseid sent Ravok after the X-Men, but it is Deathstroke who has managed to catch them. Now here we get a really cool double-page spread. This is pure Kirby, and I'd say Simonson really enjoyed drawing this. So again, we're at the wall. It stands beyond the Promethean galaxy at the end of all things, where the physical universe merges with the domains of imagination and the spirit. From the moment of creation, it stood inviolate, but now the ultimate barrier has been breached. Streamers of raw energy, the lifeblood of the source, rip through the ether, random, unfocused, awaiting only some entity to give them direction, to put them to use. And of course, that's going to be Darkseid. That entity has arrived, and there he is. And also, Ravok has arrived on the other side of the boom tube. Great one, the X-Men are yours, he says. And Darkseid is not impressed. If this is your idea of a joke, he responds, I'm not amused. Because it isn't the X-Men. It's their mentor, the Professor, but not the X-Men. It's the Teen Titans. So just at that moment, Deathstroke arrives through boom tube with the actual X-Men. And at this point, Darkseid spots that one of the Parademons accompanying Ravok isn't a Parademon. By the way, Ravok, since when are my Parademons coloured a bright emerald green? So Changeling's been spotted, and he is knocked out by Deathstroke. And now Darkseid is not at all pleased. An occasional failure I'll tolerate, Ravok, he says, but stupidity is inexcusable. You should have detected the infiltrator. And Ravok protests, Master, it's not my fault, the Earthling. And then we get to see Darkseid and the degree to which he is not mild-mannered or forgiving at all. Of course, your kind must ever blame your own incompetence on others. It is too late for such ploys, Ravok. I've loosed my Omega effect, so he's annihilated by that. And then we get to you can see there that the middle pages have come away from the staples. So we get to Darkseid putting his plan into action. So we have the X-Men strung up, as so often they are, by villains. And he's going to use this machine, this Siphon machine, to take from them all their memories of Phoenix. But also we get a little explanation as to why Kitty can't phase free of the machine. From Darkseid, he says, frozen valences, my dear. There are no spaces between the atoms of your manacles for those of your body to squeeze through. So a little physics lesson there from Darkseid to Kitty Pryde. And also this is an interesting little moment where she recognizes him as the thing from her nightmare. You're real, she says. And he points at her and he says, I am indeed. This is interesting. Adults deny me, but children know me for what I am. That makes them dangerous and worthy to be cherished. For in their innocence lies the universe's salvation, and in the loss of that innocence, my ultimate victory. So interesting little kind of point there about Darkseid being pure evil, and of course all about anti-life. An interesting idea that it's children that recognize that, but not adults. So now he tells his Parademons to activate the Psychon wave. So the contraption starts working. Nimbi of fire envelop the captive mutants as Metron's device reaches into the core of their beings and drains them once more of their memories of their fallen comrade. So really cool art on this page by Walt Simonson as something incorporates from all the swirling energies. Emotions tapped earlier at the X-Men's mansion pinpointed those areas on Earth where Phoenix manifested her power. The Siphons absorbed that residual psychic energy. Finally, the Psychon wave amplifies those elements to a near infinite degree and combines them with the raw primal energy unleashed through the breached wall. Light flares brighter than the brightest star, and a voice is heard. Who dares? So, you know, we had a fake Dark Phoenix in issue 158 of X-Men, but here we get, apparently, for the first time, Dark Phoenix for real. Who summons Dark Phoenix? She asks. I, Darkseid. He responds, and that's a great and iconic image there. And we get to see the Phoenix bird effect as well, hovering over Dark Phoenix. Very, very cool. And then his hand is extended to her, and she takes it. And meanwhile, Cyclops is heartbroken. He cries out, Jean, no. And Darkseid, grinning there, says, you waste your breath, youngling, she's mine. And it looks like Cyclops is in despair at what has happened. And that is a good point to draw to a conclusion. Part 1 of my review of Teen Titans and the new Teen Titans crossover with the Uncanny X-Men, because this is a 64-page special edition and I don't want the video to run on too long. So do tune in again next week when I will continue and conclude my review of this event, this 1982 event, big event, crossover between Marvel and DC Comics and their biggest selling titles in that time period. Let me know your thoughts on this particular comic in the comments section to the video, and if you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video in YouTube. It really does help the channel, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.